Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, we talk about 4 different types of freedom: time, location, emotional, and emotional freedom. So in that regards, I'm always interested in seeking out people that are doing things on the cutting edge, things that are doing novel things outside of the box. And I love interviewing people that are cutting edge thinkers. So in that light, I have Brian Thorp, and he's the founder and CEO of Wealthtender. And what's interesting is he and I, based out of Houston, and we both quit our lucrative careers to launch our startup. So, and I love just inspiring people, sharing the message. So I'll let Brian introduce himself and go from there. So Brian, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. Really appreciate it. So like you, I really had a terrific career, very successful in the asset management space. So as you mentioned, I worked for a large asset management company based in Houston, Invesco, and lots of great people. It was a great place to be, but after spending so much time in the air, traveling to different places, I really realized I was ready for something different. And with the support of my wife, I was able to get started with this idea that I had for Wealthtender that I'm sure we can talk a little bit more about. And no looking back, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Before we talk about there's going to be actually so much ideas and nuggets to digest here. But let's start with what Wealthtender, what it is, how it helps people, and go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. So Wealthtender is a website at the core and really trying to look at things a little bit differently. So we're focused on helping people find the best financial advisor for their particular needs. But unlike so many find an advisor sites that are out there, we realize not everybody necessarily needs to work with an advisor. So we really want to help people no matter their income or stage of life and find the best financial advisor, or it may be a financial coach or personal finance blogs and podcasts that are actually really useful for them, depending upon if they're looking for more hand-holding or if they're more of a do-it-yourself investor. And the other thing that really makes this different is historically, so many sites have started by saying to consumers, put in your zip code and we're going to find the 3 best financial advisors for you. And, that makes sense if you're ordering a pizza. You need that pizza to be somewhere close by. But when it comes to finding the best financial advisor for you, especially today, both financial advisors and consumers are all very comfortable, just like you and I today, having this Zoom call. And what that's affording the opportunity is for people to truly find the best individual for who they are. For example, very near and dear to your audience, we have financial advisors who specialize in working with medical professionals and understand all the nuances that come with it. And I would suggest for many doctors, they're going to be much better served by an advisor that truly understands everything that makes your profession being unique and the student loan debt that maybe comes with it, along with so many other factors, versus necessarily working with an advisor that just happens to be down the street.
Yeah, I love that, because what Wealthtender reminds me of, it's sort of like a matching service between people seeking the best advice and those providing it. And now there's no barriers. You can go over Zoom call. You don't need to go anywhere, and we have open lines of communication, which is really interesting. And the other thing that brings to my mind is it's a platform, and it's software, and it's a website, and it's completely scalable, and can reach millions of people and help others. So
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And in fact, that's what we see is really a diverse mix. We today currently have about 160 financial advisors, about 30 financial coaches, and many of them will work with people locally, and still that's a big part of many advisors' business. So we absolutely can help people find an advisor locally. But increasingly, I think a lot of people are realizing, whether it's just naturally they want to work with an advisor online, or perhaps they start working with an advisor locally, but as people start to move around, they move to a different city and say, well, I still want to work with that advisor who will be hundreds of miles away. And so it's a great way for people to just acclimate to that online world.
yeah, there's what's interesting is I have a couple questions. One is, when does it make sense for our listeners and audience to hire a financial coach and advisor?
Yeah, another great question. When it comes to financial coaching and financial advisors, maybe starting with a distinction between the two. So, really, from a regulatory perspective, if you are in the business of providing individualized advice and truly instructing and guiding people on what they should do with their investments, then you're going to be formally regulated as a financial advisor in some capacity. Financial coaches, on the other hand, is a completely unregulated space, and you can steer clear of avoiding regulation as long as you're not providing individual advice, specifically directing people what to do, but rather helping them with more behavioral aspects of and education versus actual instruction and guidance. And so, depending upon where an audience member may be, let's say they're maybe coming out of school, they've got medical debt, student loan debt, and they're not ready to really start investing, and they're more focused on just starting to build strategies around how might I think about paying off debt, and at the same time, maybe I do want to look at buying a house. And so a financial coach could be a more affordable way to get started with somebody that has that type of expertise and education. And then on the other hand, as you start to graduate and have more money to invest, and you're looking for a particular and specific guidance, hiring a financial advisor could be the way to go. And with all of that said, the financial advisors really have a lot of great flexibility where they can offer services, whether it's that investment advice in the regulated realm or more in the coaching space. And so what we're now seeing are a lot of financial advisors really broadening their services to be more holistic, so they can help people no matter where they are in that stage of life, and have pricing models that have really evolved over time, so it can be much more affordable, whether it's an hourly basis or on a project basis, versus what people historically may have thought of with stockbrokers, where it was more about commissions and sales charges that could be, pretty much eat you alive.
Yeah, yeah, that's I like that. The difference between advisor and coach. So it sounds like advisor, you're under a lot more scrutiny, more regulations. Um, are you seeing a lot of financial advisors moving into the coaching space, or is there people just coming up into the financial coach ranks? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. Many financial coaches have chosen not to move into financial advisory work because they prefer to stay kind of outside that regulatory realm, but it does kind of hinder their ability to provide that full realm of advice that an advisor can give. So, what we are definitely seeing are financial advisors really broadening out and moving into that space for a number of reasons. Again, investment management in many ways has been to some degree commoditized, where people are encouraging you to put everything in low cost index funds and having a diversified portfolio that you more or less set it and forget it. And I know you and I both share an interest in some alternative types of solutions, whether it's real estate and maybe a more active approach. But for a lot of financial advisors that historically would have made money based upon managing assets for their clients, a percentage of assets under management, for example, that's less and less the case, and therefore many advisors are moving more into that coaching realm, as well as offering more holistic financial planning services that are really intended to help you more broadly put a thoughtful plan in place, whether you're trying to save for education, college, your children, or buying a house, and maybe having that first child, or ultimately saving for retirement.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite interesting. And the other thing I wanted to point out was, unlike lawyers and doctors, the SEC has always prohibited advisors from marketing their services using ratings and reviews. But you're saying it expected to change soon. What should our audience and listeners be prepared to look out for when this change takes effect?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, has historically, dating back to when John F. Kennedy was president, prohibited financial advisors from asking their clients to write a review, and also prohibiting financial advisors from using those reviews to promote their business. And what the SEC realized was, this is pretty antiquated, and it's time to change the rules, for the very reason that all of us as consumers, when we're looking to hire, whether it's professional, or obviously, hotels and restaurants, but in so many cases, financial services professionals, doctors, lawyers, it's really refreshing to be able to read reviews. So, up until now, a lot of financial advisors have only been able to say, here are my academics, here's my experience and credentials. but they've been left in the little world where they haven't been able to provide the actual experience from their actual clients that they work with. And so the SEC came out with this new rule saying we realize it's long overdue. And today, if you are an SEC registered financial advisor, you can finally begin to ask for reviews and promote those reviews. But importantly, while that's obviously useful for advisors to market and grow their business, it's the flip side of the equation that's really important to remember, that it's really for the benefit of consumers. They can finally take advantage of those reviews to make more informed and educated hiring decisions. So in terms of your audience, what they can expect to see going forward are more online reviews and testimonials about advisors that they're thinking about hiring, or perhaps about the advisors that they're working with today. And that they may also be getting calls if they work with a financial advisor, buttering them up to say, hey, I would really love if you could leave a review for me on a site like Wealthtender. And so one of the things that we've done at Wealthtender is we are actually the very first financial advisor review platform that's fully compliant with the new SEC marketing rule. And so there are some prescriptive things that advisors need to do, but to their credit, the SEC basically just wants to make sure that consumers know when they read a review, if that review was written by somebody who was a client, or it's their mom, or somebody who's never been a client. Was that person compensated for writing that review or not? And are there any material conflicts of interest? And so we incorporate all of that onto our review platform on Wealthtender, and really think if you come back 2 years, 5 years down the road, just like if you were looking for a doctor or a lawyer, it's going to be much easier for your audience to go out and find an advisor, not only based upon their credentials and experience, but also having a much better sense of the job they've done based on the feedback from the clients that have written reviews.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, with all the rules and regulations, especially, the SEC uses the Howey's test, which was back in the 30s to evaluate whether something launched in today's time is a security. So kind of what you were describing was really, reminds me of that, how far behind.
Right.
There's I know a lot of so this is really interesting because I know a lot of the audience, they're interested in financial coaching or financial advice. And then what's interesting is that you actually created this business. And reading from your bio, you actually created from a small beach town during the pandemic. What's that like?
Yeah, so typically I'd be living in the same city as you in Houston, Texas. And when COVID came about, my wife and I, we don't have any children. We had a house that we were actually trying to sell, and we just actually had visited a town called Tulum that's a couple hours south of Cancun in Mexico. And we were there for about a week on vacation and then came back, which was still around the peak time of quarantine in May of 2021, I think it was, and just realized, wow, this is crazy. Like, why don't we just take advantage of this? This COVID thing might last for a few weeks. And so we ended up coming back to Tulum, and we were there for what we thought was going to be just another few weeks until the COVID situation was over. And then obviously that protracted, and we ended up being there for 10 months. And then we returned to the States, but actually I'm in Tulum right now chatting with you because we had the opportunity to come back for the summer, and it's just proven to be a wonderful place to live and obviously to play. We can pedal on our cheap Mexican bikes down to the beach, and life is good.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially with COVID. It changed the way we work, travel, and the rise of digital nomadism is at an all-time high. And so you're embodying financial, location, time, emotional freedom. So you're free. You don't have any attachments, and you're able to contribute and grow. And so I think that's very inspiring for all of the listeners to point out to. So
Yeah, it's actually worked out really well. We're still in the same time zone with Houston, and obviously that's useful. And then there's a cost arbitrage as well, right? So living here is a little bit cheaper, generally speaking. And then sure, the time. I mean, we're actually next week going to do a little weekend trip to another beach town and just jump on the bus, which takes a couple of hours, and it's just really easy to get to explore places we otherwise wouldn't get to see. But then to Mexico's credit, at least in the right places, the high-speed internet has been terrific and easy for us to do what we need to do best during the day, and then enjoy the time and meeting the people. Like you said, a lot of digital nomads here alongside us, and getting to spend time meeting some interesting people here as well.
yeah, it's quite interesting. I just love talking to individuals such as yourself, because you're embodying what the work lifestyle is going to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so what are some resources that people can get started with to learn more about you, and or just learn about financial advising, financial coaching in general?
Sure. So one of the things that we're focused on at Wealthtender is really providing a lot of great, valuable education. So we wanted to make sure the service is free to all consumers. The way we make money is actually charging the financial professionals who are featured on the site so that we can ensure it's free to everybody else. And what that's afforded us the opportunity to do is publish hundreds of really high quality articles on a broad range of personal finance topics. So people, if they finish this podcast and they want to jump on to the wealthtender.com website, you can look by all sorts of different topics based upon your occupation. So as a physician, for example, we have a great article, whether you're nursing, dentist, as a traditional physician, on financial planning uniquely to your individual needs, as well as more general articles. If you're a small business owner, maybe you've got your own practice, some really great tips and good insights. And because of that community of financial professionals that we have established, we're able to lean in and leverage their insights within a lot of these articles, where they're providing some good quotes and their own knowledge and experience to really make those articles that much more robust. So lots of great information that your audience can find out there. And I'm certainly happy to speak with any of them individually if they're looking for guidance on anything specific to their unique circumstances as well.
Yeah, and so for all the listeners out there, Brian's resources will be in the links and show notes. And again, congratulations on launching your website and your company and your business, and embodying the 4 types of freedom that we talk about. And any last parting words of advice before we call it a day?
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity to come on and congratulate you as well for everything that you're doing and the education that you're providing your audience in terms of how they can really take advantage of the new world that we're living in. And it's just terrific to see, and look forward to more opportunities in the future.